Strategic deception can be loosely defined as making key decision makers do what you want them to do and think that they wanted to do it in the first place. Well, in military strategic deception, it's making the enemy move their armies the way that you want them to for a strategic advantage. Operation Mincemeat is that type of story. And according to historian Ben McIntyre, who wrote the book Operation Mincemeat, it's a most Monty Python-esque story. Oh, how do I go down? Oh, there we go. From the Trojan Horse that took a city to the Regan Era Star Wars program that helped end global Cold War. Deception has changed the course of history, and this story fits right in. It's 1943 and World War II, and the war against Hitler's fortress Europe is about to start. The Battle of Atlantic is at its zenith. Operation Torch and the invasion of Africa has been a success, and the Allies against the Axis, against the Axis powers there. The Soviet Union is on the counteroffensive on the Eastern Front, but it's been a slog, and Hitler is about to go back on the offensive. Stalin is pressuring the Allies to attack Western Europe and relieve pressure on his forces, but the Atlantic Wall is insurmountable to the Allies to attack northern France. Oops. I'm sorry. Winston Churchill understands this, and he decides to have a plan to attack the soft underbelly of Eastern or Western Europe, and by attacking Sicily. But the problem is that that's exactly what Hitler and the Axis expected from the Allies to do, is attack Sicily. But it's a job of two men, corkscrew thinkers, as Churchill puts them, and a cadre full of characters to fix that. So the first one was, first bad name, Ewan Montague, excuse me, thank you, the leader of the team. He was a Naval Reserve officer and a lawyer that had never been on a naval ship, but was known for his ability to see things from all different angles. The other was Charles Chumley, somehow spelled that way, was an eccentric RAF intelligence air officer who could not fly a plane. And he also introduced himself by saying, "Hi, I'm Charles Chumley," spelled that way. They were members of a counterintelligence agency known as the 20 Committee, and composed of a host of intelligence groups, including MI5 and MI6, and which turns out to be also a visual pun for double cross, because they were a counterintelligence agency, and it was also a nod to Charlie Chaplin and the great dictator as the kind of symbolistic sign of the Nazi cross. Sorry, go back up. So they came up with an idea from a ruse they read from a memo circulated earlier in the war under the name of Admiral John Godfrey. And I don't know, he was a director of naval intelligence. And this was the guy that Ian Fleming modeled M after in his Bond series. And this document was called the Trout Memo, and there's a quote up there, which was a list of 45 deceptions to fool the enemy that ranged from the practical to the bizarre. And these were thought to be written by Ian Fleming. You know, Ian Fleming, that Ian Fleming. Well, one of those deceptions really caught the eye of Charles Chumley, and that was called suggestion number 28, a suggestion, a not very nice one, which was likely written by Ian Fleming. And how do you go down? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, never mind. But the point is it all kind of went down from Ian Fleming gotten this idea from a 1937 novel by Thomas Basil, who was also a World War I spy hunter. And he got it, thank you, and he got it from another guy that came up with a haversack ruse, which was the idea of bringing a haversack, or having a haversack full of intelligence to plant amongst the enemy with information that they would play upon, that looked so convincing that they would act upon it. Well, the idea was to find a body that was the right age of a military man that had no apparent familiar connection and physically looked like he drowned from an accident over the ocean. Well, they'll create a persona for him and a backstory, plant vital information on him. In this case, it was Operation Barclay, a fake operation that was meant to attack Greece or Sardinia at the time, then dump him into the ocean so as to look like a plane crash off the coast of Spain. Technically neutral, but Spain was actually sympathetic to the Axis allies. And knowing that, from previous experience, that the Spanish would, if they found any intelligence, they would actually feed it to the German intelligence. Well, that's exactly what they were going for. But here's the thing. Oops, sorry, going back up there. Sorry. So the thing is so the persona that they picked for this guy is, sorry, I can't read the thing, so I'm going to actually tell you from my memory, is William Martin. It was Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. He was actually a real soldier. And they picked this guy particularly is because, first of all, he was part of the Admiralty. And so Army soldiers at the time had to carry information for him. And so another reason why they picked him is because he was actually a real soldier, and the Germans would actually know who this guy, like they had the roles of all the guys that were in the military. So they wanted to find him, but he was stationed in Rhode Island in the US, so he would not know this operation would be going on, and all of a sudden find out that he's dead. So, but the thing is, so they created this persona for him, hence the passport right there. So, but it wasn't just that, sorry, there we go. It would not be enough just to simply plant false information on this guy. He needed to create a backstory. So when they found the body, they would actually go, this guy actually is a real person. And so we wouldn't be deceived. So to deceive them thinking this is just a normal everyday accident, they planted intelligence that would create a verbose story for a dead man using the mundane detritus of life, also called to the British pocket litter. Based on this, Major Martin was engaged to be married to his longtime fiancée, Pam, who this picture was planted on him, who was actually in reality an MI5 clerk named Jean Leslie, who was about 20 years old, and who wrote him diligently real love letters planted onto the body. And by the way, these were written between Montague and Leslie, who it actually turned out to reveal that the two were likely having an affair in real life. He was wearing a uniform that was being worn by Chumley every day until the start of the execution of this operation to get a worn, lived-in feeling of it. He had a medallion on him that showed that he was a Catholic because they were going to dump him near Spain, which is a Catholic country, and they're opposed to actually doing autopsies on bodies unless it's truly necessary. He was science. So he also, so they were going to put the information in his hand, but they realized that rigor mortis would probably give it up. So they chained a briefcase onto his hand with a leather strap, which you can actually see right up there. And then also, they made a story that he was also really bad at paying his bills. So, so both his a bill for his engagement ring, an overdraft letter from the bank, from the real bank, and also an invitation to his club, as well as prescriptions for drugs. So on 17th of April, 1943, Martin was packaged in dry ice, delivered to the submarine HMS Seraph submarine, to set sail from Spain and operate on April 30th, and spotted and attacked twice from the Axis aircraft, dropped off our cargo at Huelva, I can't say that word, Spain at 4:15, and while they dropped him off, they actually was a solemn occasion, and they read Psalm 39. At 9:30 that morning, a Spanish sardine fisherman, yes, there is a fishy theme to this whole thing, spotted the body and took him aboard and delivered him to the Spanish authorities. By the way, during all this time, the British were actually sending radio signals between England and the consulate in Madrid saying that a plane just crashed. There's important information on this plane. And, they were essentially, sorry, that threw me off completely. Bletchley Park was also listening in on the Germans and the Spanish, trying to figure out what's going on during this time, like if they're actually going to catch it. Well, they did. The Spanish did actually hand it over to the Germans. The Germans actually took it. And the guy that was a corkscrew thinker actually looked at it and thought it was actually fake. But because there was some real politics going on in Germany and Berlin at the time, he goes, fuck it, excuse my French. I'm going to send it off to Berlin. I wash my hands of it. He does it. So he does, and Bletchley Park finds this out. And what they say is mincemeat, which is the name of the Operation Mincemeat, taken. Rod, bait, and sinker. Which brings it back to the whole idea of the trout memo and the fish references. So, the aftermath. Was this a successful operation? Well, I'll tell you what. Germany, taking the bait, moved about 90,000 men, including an entire Panzer division, from Sicily to Greece to fortify the Balkans. Sicily was invaded in July 9th, 1943, by Americans and British forces. The British had expected 10,000 killed within the first week of fighting, but only about 1,400 were casualties. The Navy expected over 300 ships to be sunk. Instead, there was only 12. Also, it was predicted it was going to be a 90-day campaign, and it ended up only being 38. So, essentially, I would call that a success. So Cholmondeley and Montague were both decorated with the most excellent British Order of Officers, which is almost being like knighted. It's like the Medal of Honor for officers of the British Knights. Montague went to go ahead and write a book, if you guys probably read it or saw the movie, The Man Who Never Was. Well, this is actually a work of fiction, right? Because MI5 actually went through it and goes, none of this can be printed, right? This is like 1956. They're like, we don't want the Russians to see how good we are. Speaking of the Russians, his brother actually ended up being a spy himself for the Russians, and actually handed over some nuclear secrets to the Russians that were from the British. But ultimately, and the most important person in this one was Gwynplaine Michael. Gwynplaine Michael is the Welshman that was found dead, that ended up being the man who never was. And so I want to raise a toast. So in 1990, his body as Major Martin was buried with full honors by the Spanish in World War II. In the 1990s, the British went up there and actually printed his name on the gravestone, which Gwendolyn, who was a Gwendler, sorry, again, Dion. This was a homeless guy, was destitute, had nothing going for him, but he is now buried as a military major in a military cemetery in Spain. So, a toast to Gwynplaine Michael, the man who never was, who in death saved so many lives.